Today I am here because I also want to talk about our future. But to focus on him, it's necessary, first, understand how we get here. It is estimated that humans have been in this land for approximately 300,000 years, of which 290,000 were collecting hunters, living in rags, without engineering or agriculture, much less writing. It was a life based on the most basic survival instinct of the animal kingdom, if it survives, if I do not get hungry. About 10,000 years ago we discovered how to cultivate the earth, and this allowed us to feed between 10 and 100 times more people per hectare, which led us to reorganize ourselves in more complex societies. This brought an exponential development with which we ended up conquering the entire planet. We leave the caves to meet in villages and cities, we sail all the waters, we build unthinkable monuments, we conquer jungles, forests and mountains. We developed mathematics and writing, and in 1450 a man named Gutenberg discovered the modern printing press. For those who are interested in the models of economic growth and in how history can be explained, of GDP per capita, in the history of humanity, and suggest, emphatically, read a book, which is called The Unified Theory of Growth by Oded Galor. It is an endogenous economic growth model, which has a breakpoint of 1,000 million human beings and, prior to that balance, is a Malthusian balance. Then, it is an accelerated endogenous growth balance. I say, for those who are interested, as these kinds of things have fun, I understand that it is not a generalized preference. But, in addition, Oded Galor follows me on Twitter. So I'm chocho with that. This invention accelerated our development exponentially, to the point that approximately 95% of humanity's inventions occurred in the last 0.2% of its history, that is, in the last 575 years. The consequence of this is that, today, an average citizen has a better quality of life than a Roman emperor. Imagine that, in 250 years, we went from 95% of humanity to go hungry to that today there is a generalized problem of obesity worldwide. That is, technology is the greatest sample of the abilities that human being has, both individual and collective. Each technological innovation is another step that man has taken to solve a problem, allowing him to have idle time to solve the next. In turn, the great inventions of humanity feel like miracles in life. If we told an Egyptian pharaoh that the human can fly, that he arrived at the moon, or even that he can communicate thousands of kilometers in second fractions, thanks internet, he would believe that we are gods. If we told Aristotle that we have all the books in history in our pocket, I would believe the same. Each of these miracles elevates men, in the eyes of the past, to the place of gods, and there was never a better time for the human being than today. No matter how much the agoreros on duty want to scare us that the world goes to the demon. The same goes for the internet and the democratization of knowledge, which allows us to break historical monopolies such as the monopoly of truth. Call the microphone set, the subtitle past. Today anyone with a cell phone is a carrier of a public voice that can be published to infinity, and is also a carrier of an immense collective memory file. Thus it becomes easier to unravel the perverse lies, of whom, until a few years ago, they were the only authorized voice supported by state pattern. It seems that when they were also enough violent, that is, as someone says, the most sensitive organ of the human being is pocket, and it seems that that of journalists a little more. I lived it during the presidential campaign, because I was accused of any kind of barbarity, and it was thanks to the voice of the people, in the networks, that I was the most voted president in Argentine history, despite not having governorates, or intendancies, or means in my favor, and despite having taken the most austere electoral campaign in history. But, as the phrase of the Maccabees says, the victory in the battle does not depend on the number of soldiers, but on the forces, which come from heaven, and she is right. Another historical monopoly that technology is cracking is the monopoly of the currency, because the individuals of the world tired of the lords, finger tax, by bureaucrats on duty, and begin to use autonomous means of exchange of the central power, but still reliable, such as cryptocurrencies. The same, in any case, do not let the states take over and carry out the cryptocurrencies the states that are maintained in the private sector. They already appropriated paper money and scam us with the greatest scam in the history of humanity, which are the central banks. That is, go for cryptocurrencies, but do not allow the state to put the hand there, because, from there, they will turn us into slaves. Be very careful with that topic. And a third is the fiscal monopoly. Since today, for example, an Argentine citizen can decide to pay in the United States, Paraguay, Uruguay, without any problem, escaping from the kleptomana's jaws of an insatiable state. In short, technology is an ally for the citizen in their daily search for freedom. It helps us to be more owner, our time and the fruit of our work. Paradoxically, Argentines to go to the future have to meet again with truths, which are in the deep past of our nation, truths that our national heroes at the dawn of Argentina knew well. Not for anything Roca said, commerce knows better than the government what suits him. The true policy thus consists of leaving the broadest freedom. The true policy is that they do nothing, that they run from the environment. Not the high policy of caste members negotiating behind citizens behind and ruining his life to remain and have privileges. That is not high politics, that is rot that impoverishes the people of good. I choose to echo this claim as old as true, because I understand that it is attracting capital and not fighting it that is thrown out. Because I understand that it is, through tax decline, and not spurious devaluations, which impoverish the population, which has achieved competitiveness. Because I understand that today the fiscal career is equally important as the aerospace race or the arms race. The United States already realized and the model is copying us. In fact, Elon Musk has conversations with Federico Sturzenegger to see how to deregulate the U.S. economy. And, obviously, the outside and the chainsaw are export products. So it is part of the country brand. Chief, take charge. We have to be spearhead, as Ireland knew how to be. In 1874, he had one of the famine, more severe in history, decimating approximately 25% of its population. 40 years ago, they were still the poorest country in Western Europe, and in the 90s, decided to embrace the ideas of freedom, cutting the expense and lowering taxes, which led him to have a 50% PBI per capita 50% greater than that of the United States. That is, you can. In fact, it is the freest country in the world. And we, at this time, after having passed the base law and the DNU, we made the largest structural reform of Argentine history, even 8 times bigger than Menem's. And that allows us to climb 90 positions in terms of economic freedom. However, for us that is not enough. We are still pending 3,200 structural reforms, and surely, if Argentines accompany us at the polls, we are going to do, from Argentina, the freest country in the world. So, within 20, 30 or 40 years, Argentina will be the maximum world power. Argentina is facing its own hinge moment because, for the first time, the foundations are being sitting so that growth is durable. Little by little we are leaving the septic well, in which they sank us, and we will have to get used to this new paradigm. Changing paradigm implies stop thinking 1 week and starting to think 5 or 10, 20 or 40 years. Stop having the idea of constant emigrating because there is a Draculino state biting our neck and being able to project a personal project here in our lands. It is no accident that, in less than a year, we have managed to reinstall the mortgage loans. It is because we are looking for their own destinations again, without being running behind a crisis, that they take their pocket, every second, with inflation. Therefore, we will guarantee that the property will be sacred to all and protected with the full weight of the law, to return to the Argentines the certainty that, if you do not bother anyone, no one will come to bother you to you, and that, if you assume the risk of going out to solve life to the neighbor, the market will reward you with a personal benefit. As Warren Buffett said, the best time to sow a tree was 20 years ago, the second best is today. In short, it is hugging the same ideas of freedom, which once made us great, that Argentina will be prosperous, and he has no doubt that the future will be better than the present because we have history as our best witness. I remember that, in my previous life, when I dedicated myself to giving talks of economic growth and that kind of thing, I had a presentation on technological progress and economic growth, and the presentation started by saying, "We do not know how the future will be. All we know is that it will be much better. Do not have doubts that, if we embrace the ideas of freedom, that future will be much better." May God bless the Argentines, that the forces of heaven accompany us, and long live freedom. Damn it. Thank you so much.